Alright, CNT125, Chapter 10, we're looking at the Network Access Controls section. And they remind us, hey, as networks grow and get more complex, bring our own device and so forth, we need a way to handle network access. So network access control systems, here is a combination of things that get done, set of rules, network policies, and all that's determining the type of access that a device gets when it joins the network. Things like your firewalls, routers, switches, ASAs, all kind of work together to perform this network access control function. And it's really a combination of things to be like, okay, what is this thing, this person, this device allowed to do on our network? So first thing is the authenticating authorized devices by verifying the device complies with is a certain set of security parameters, and in some cases an actual software agent needs to be installed on this device before it can be authenticated. Okay, you're going to connect to a network, you're going to install this agent that's going to double check that these things are here and in place before you can be used on our network. Then the agent monitors that device regarding security and making sure it complies with the necessaries to be on this network. And they delineate there's two different types of agents, non-persistent and persistent. Non-persistent agent is dissolvable, meaning it stays on the device long enough to be authenticated, but then might uninstall, but it might need to be reinstalled occasionally to be like, okay, are you still secure, are you still up to date? That might be something you do, you know, if you go somewhere for a short amount of time, connect and use the resources. When you're done, you can uninstall and go home kind of thing. Persistent agent is permanently installed on the device. This might be something that, you know, if a company issues you a device, whether it be a laptop or smartphone or whatever, this is on here all the time, and it's there to make sure it's continually meeting the security requirements of the company or facility, and might even have additional features in that if this device is indicated as stolen, we can do a remote wipe. So the next thing, the time the device turns on, it's automatically going to start deleting all of its data. That way it's protecting the company. So there might be one of those two, non-persistent or persistent agent. You might actually have agentless authentication. In this case, something like an Active Directory, the user logs in on a device and through Active Directory says, okay, yeah, Doug Brown is who he is and here's his password. Okay, based on that, they're allowed to do A, B, and C. And they might get thrown into a certain part of the network. The Active Directory might scan the device to determine if it's compliant. If it is, excellent. If not, it might go to a guest or public network. If there's a big problem, it might even go to a quarantine network where it's like, hey, you're not going to do anything. You're kind of over here. So this can be done even on something like an Active Directory, this network access control. So different types of access control technologies. Authentication protocols, basically are rules that computers follow to accomplish authentication. So now looking at authentication, several types of authentication service and protocols exist. The first and foremost is directory services. Things like Windows Active Directory. Clients authenticate to network resources. The server says, yes, go ahead, and you have access to blah, 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 based on username and password. Active Directory in Windows, and there's even Open LDAP out there that other systems can use as well. Lightweight directory access protocol. As we move on, they remind us at the bottom down here that Active Directory by default uses Kerberos. So let's take a look at, I think the next thing one of the next things they throw us down the road is Kerberos. We'll come back to that later. They throw a couple other old authentication protocols at us first. PAP is one. I recall many years ago configuring this between two routers, authenticating one remote router network to another one. Password authentication protocol. A client uses PAP to authenticate to a device. This is all clear text without encryption, so you can see the problem right away. It basically is a two-step authentication. It's simple, it's not secure. It's like, hey, here's my username and password. It's like, oh, okay, you can connect to me, or you can send traffic to me, kind of thing. An advancement to that was your challenge, your CHAP, your Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol, CHAP. Here, it's a three-step process, if you will. There's a challenge, a response, and an accept, reject, if you will. It encrypts usernames and passwords, and what happens is the server challenges, the device responds, and then the server, if you will, accepts or rejects. So now you have, okay, you want to try to connect. It's like, okay, who are you? It's like, okay, here's my username and password encrypted. Okay, you've been authenticated. So it's a little bit better in the process. And even Microsoft had its own version of this, Microsoft Chap. You sometimes do see this on wireless networks, so just kind of stick that in the back of your brain. Potential flaw with this is eavesdropping and picking up this information as it goes along. So MS Chap 2, stronger encryption, and again, you might still see this in, I actually jumped ahead of myself, you might still see this in wireless environments, WPA2 wireless environments. You still might encounter that. And it's based on this idea back here. Okay. Getting into Kerberos then, like I said, I got kind of jumped ahead of myself there. Kerberos, Active Directory uses this by default. Active Directory could use LDAP or something like that, but by default it uses Kerberos. This is a cross-platform authentication. Uses key encryption, private key encryption service, if you will. So Kerberos, we have a couple things we need to kind of define before we look at it. They use the three-headed dog. I think they talk about this later in the chapter, but they use the three-headed dog because this is kind of like a three-step process, if you will. This is an old Greek mythology, three-headed dog, or if you're a Harry Potter fan, Fluffy the three-headed dog blocking the entrance to the pathway to get to the Sorcerer's Stone. Okay. Kerberos does not automatically trust clients. They have to prove their identity through a third party before they can get authenticated. So we have the principal, that's the Kerberos client or user. We have the key distribution center, and then we have a ticket. Ticket, I think they use an example in there of this is almost like a ticket at a fair to be able to ride a ride. That's the best way to think of that. So it's a ticket ability to use a resource like an email server or a file server in a network. The server actually has two services, the authentication service and the ticket granting service. Okay, so a user wants to be authenticated on the network and use a resource on the network. So the first thing it does is like, hey, Mr. Kerberos authentication dude, here's me, I'm Doug Brown, here's my password. It's like, okay, great. You're now going to want to talk to this ticket dude over here. Okay, ticket granting service, can you give me a ticket? And it's now going to say, okay, Doug Brown, okay, they're an employee, okay, they're in this department, okay, they want to use blah service. Oh, okay, here's a ticket to go do so. Or it's going to say, no, you're not authorized to do that, and it would stop it right then and there. So, okay, here's your ticket, and now I can take that ticket, almost like a little permission slip, to go use blah service, whether it be a file server or, work on a certain file server or print to a certain printer or whatever happens to be. So this is like this three-step process to say, okay, who are you? Based on who, okay, you are who you are, okay, great. Based on who you are, what you have access to, and now I can take that to this other resource. So this tends to be this like one-stop shop for authenticating, granting access to different entities around the network. Very, very commonly used, especially with Active Directory. Now, Kerberos is an example of a single sign-on. I could, with a large network, have a single sign-on that users can hit with one username and password, and based on my role, give me tickets to different things. Oh, you can use this over here. Oh, you can use that over there. You can use this over here. You can use that over there. And allows a lot more convenience for the users. The downside for IT, though, is once the user's logged in and their authentication is cleared, they have access to things. So a hacker really only needs to get over that first hurdle. Now I might have access to a number of different things. So that's one of the downsides of the single sign-on, but it is more convenient for the users. Now we get into two-factor or multi-factor authentication. For greater security, clients might need to do two-factor or multi-factor authentication. So in this case, you might need to do two things to be able to get access to a resource on the network. So multi-factor authentication. Here's a couple things that can be done. You could have to provide a password. You could have to provide a certain card. You might have to provide a fingerprint. You might need to be in a specific location in the building. You might need to identify a certain way you walk or speak or talk. And these can be used in combination. So I could actually have to do two things. I might need to plug my username and password in, great, and then I might need to swipe my finger. Or I might need to have a certain type of card that I swipe to be able to have access. That's your multi-factor authentication. One thing that often gets used is a security token. If you work in any kind of financial facility, this is often what gets done. You have a username and password, and you also have to provide this, it's almost like a random number that gets generated. I shouldn't say random number, it's a number getting generated that needs to be plugged in addition to your username and password. And then it's like, yep, okay, you're coming from a reliable source, okay. And that token can get used as part of your multi-factor authentication. Radius or Radius servers, okay, now I can have a centralized service to manage resources over all three functions, all AAA. The most popular AAA service is Radius, and this was an open source standard developed in '91. Internet Engineering Task Force runs at the application layer and can be used as either UDP or blah 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 or TCP as of a handful of years ago. Okay, so with Radius now, your authentication authorization is basically treated as one single process. So it's kind of streamlining the first two A's. This can all be done on actually a server that you have allocated. With that, the servers are highly scalable. A lot of your ISPs use them. A lot of times this gets used for wireless users, remote access users. And this can also even be combined with other servers that you might have. You can combine this with a DHCP server, that kind of thing. So I now have a Radius server where I might have wireless users being authenticated and authorized and then allowed to be on the network or have resources to something. So very common, especially in the wireless end of things. Another AAA protocol, your TACACS. This is the option of separating out the three A's, if you will. I can have access, accounting, authorization broken out and use something like Kerberos to authenticate, and then your TACACS do the accounting and the authorization if I want to. Difference from Radius that relies on TCP, not UDP. Cisco proprietary. This is installed on a router or switch instead of a Radius server. And this is often used for admin access control for technicians. Can be used for network resources, but usually a lot of times they're remote access for technicians. All that's encrypted. Alrighty, we'll come back in the last podcast and talk about wireless.